Welcome to the Awakened Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters. Get ready to create magic and miracles as you lean into your heart's desires. I believe not only does the heart want what it wants, but it knows. This show is a weekly deep dive into what it means to live from an awakened heart. I'll be sharing inspiring stories and real conversations with people just like you, who have turned the ordinary into the extraordinary. My mission is to show you how you too can be connected and heart-centered in every area of your life. Your journey to aligning with more love, more joy, and your wildest dreams come true starts now. Welcome back to another episode of the Awakened Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters, and today I'm joined by writer, coach, and mindfulness teacher, April Dávila, for a conversation that beautifully weaves together creativity, consciousness, and the inner journey. April's path to living a more intuitive and authentic life began in 2016, though at the time she didn't even realize she was stepping into something bigger. Like so many creatives, she had been waking up at 5 a.m. to work on her novel, grinding through frustration until meditation shifted everything. Not only did she finish her book and land a publishing deal, but she found her way to a deeper, more aligned version of herself. In our conversation, April shares how mindfulness helped her face rejection, inner criticism, and the ups and downs of the writing world, and how these same tools can help anyone tap into their creative instincts. You're going to love this conversation whether you're a writer, a dreamer, or simply someone seeking a more grounded life. This episode is full of insight, inspiration, and gentle reminders to turn inward and trust your process. Let's dive in. Hey, April, welcome to the Awakened Heart Podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am so happy to have you here finally. It feels like we've been going back and forth for a time now to pick a time that we could meet together and have this conversation. So here we are finally, and it all happens in divine timing. So whatever is going to come across is what we're supposed to hear right now. So welcome to the Awakened Heart.
Thank you.
You're
Yes.
welcome. So I would love to hear, we heard a little bit about you in the intro, but I love how meditation really was a game changer for you as far as living a more intuitive, authentic life. And I would love to hear your story about how you were a writer before for years, and it sounded like you were in the grind, which a lot of us are, getting up for work every day. 5 a.m. I don't do 5 a.m. I might wake up at 5 and be like, "Oh, good, I can sleep for another 2 hours in bed." I love it. And, with that comes, I've heard with a lot of people, there's a lack of fulfillment, or there's people become frustrated with the lack of success, or maybe they're in the wrong direction, or maybe they're getting a nudge that maybe this career path or how we're doing things isn't, working out for us. And so you took that hit, and intuitive hit, and it led you to meditation, and you started meditating regularly, and you really observed your thoughts and your behavioral patterns, and led you into it sounds like a more purpose-driven way of doing things, purpose-driven way of writing and creating. So I would love to hear, let's start with your own awakening. What moment or series of events cracked you open to the deeper work that you do now?
It's such a great question. I think like most people, when I first discovered meditation, I realized how powerful it could be, and then very, very quickly kind of forgot to do it. We set the intentions. I went to a day-long meditation, and I loved it, and I felt like I had really tapped into something that felt really good, and I knew it was good for me, and I was going to meditate every day. And then, of course, every day became every week, which became every month, which became like sometimes, which kind of meant never.
Right.
Um, yeah, and so then fast forward a decade of like kind of sometimes meditating, and I took another class that I really enjoyed, and that class had a challenge in it where we were supposed to meditate every day. And so that was when I actually started integrating meditation into my daily practice. And the class was only a month that we were supposed to do that. And what I had found by the end of the month was how much my perspective had shifted, how much my writing practice specifically had shifted. And it took many more months for me to kind of realize the full benefits of it, but almost immediately, writing was easier, weathered rejections a lot easier. Rejections are part of writing. Like if you're going to be a creative, rejections are part of life and you have to learn to weather those and they're not fun. But everything shifted for me when I started meditating regularly. And I really was only doing 10 minutes a day.
Mhm.
I was getting up early before work to write, and I would have my coffee and journal while I tried to wake up, and then I would switch to my laptop and work on my novel. And what I did was wedge 10 minutes of meditation in between those two. So I'd drink my coffee and journal, then I'd meditate for 10 minutes, and then I would write. And just making that simple change of doing it regularly, everything shifted, and I didn't even realize it at first. Years went by before I realized, like, okay, I'd finished the novel, I found an agent, sold the book, wrote another book, like my short stories after being rejected over and over again, all of a sudden they got published, they got nominated for awards, like everything shifted for me. And when probably about 5 years after that, when I looked back and was trying to think about, well, what did I do that suddenly made everything start working? Because I had been struggling as a writer for almost a decade before all this. And when I realized that it was about the same time that I started meditating, my mind immediately dismissed it. I was like, well, that's just correlation, not
Mhm.
causation, right? That like that can possibly be. But as I started to really look at the things that had shifted, I realized that meditation was directly responsible for it. And because I am also a coach and I help other writers, I started to really think about how could I break down the lessons that I had learned and teach them to other people. And I found that there were really 6 specific ways that mindfulness had helped me be a better writer. And that was what ultimately became the pitch for my book that I just sold to St. Martin's Press, and it'll be coming out in July of 2020. We don't have an official pub date, just the
Mm.
month right now.
Sit right
But
here.
yeah, it's called Sit Right Here, Write with WRITE, Sit Right Here. And it's all about
Oh, okay.
how mindfulness can help us. It's specifically geared at writers. I think it's applicable to pretty much any art. That's not entirely true. Like chapter 5 is about characters, right? Like some stuff is specific to writing, but my mom is a visual artist and she follows my blog and reads all my stuff. And she's always telling me how much the same principles she can apply them to visual art of just
Mhm.
quieting the inner critic, getting in
Yeah.
touch with what is it that you really want to say with your art. It's been a surprising and exciting journey, and I'm so excited to put this book out into the world and share it with more people.
Yeah. Yeah, well, meditation and getting quiet helps just about anything in life, whether you're wealth building, if you're in a tech field or whatever. I mean, of course, it's creativity. I mean, it's tied with creativity,
Yeah.
but just quieting us and just getting some guidance from quieting ourselves and meditating. And what was the first moment that you realized that writing was part of your path? And I
Uh,
know mindfulness wove itself into that journey. So can you take us back to that moment?
it's funny, I've always loved writing, but I dismissed it because it was a fun thing, and, like, fun things can't be real business, you can't, like, make a living with it, so I just kinda dismissed it. I got an undergraduate degree in biology, I worked in the sciences for a little while, but it's funny, as much as I always loved writing, and I kinda did it on the side, never considered myself a writer until I was at this bachelorette party, and my friend had a fortune teller come, a palm reader, and I told her, I was like, I'm kinda nervous, like, I'm, like, getting my palm read, I don't want you to tell me anything I don't wanna know." And she's like, "I promise I'll be nice." And I held my hand out to her and she's like, "Oh, you're a writer." That was all she said was like, "Oh, you're a writer." And I was like, "You're right, I am. Like, why have I never stepped into that?" And I was kind of at a transition point in my life anyway, but I think it's so funny that, like, all the signs were there, but it took this stranger to look at me and say, "Oh, you're a writer," for me to, like, recognize it and be
You're like,
willing to
"Ah,"
step into it.
and you're like, "Ah, yeah."
Oh, yeah, that thing I love doing? That's right.
Yes, I'm just looking right here. Your nonfiction, you're finishing up your first nonfiction book, Scribbling Buddha. You have a newsletter, Scribbling Buddha. I love that.
The newsletter is called Scribbling Buddha. I was going to name the book Scribbling Buddha, but the
Okay,
publisher was worried that people would mistake it as a visual arts book
got it.
because of
Okay.
the scribbling, so we've retitled it Sit Right Here.
Okay, so that's what it is. 6
Yeah.
ways mindfulness can help you write more stuff, write
Suffer
more and suffer less.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I suffer when I write because whenever they're talking about journaling, I'm like, "Oh, but my arm hurts." It's
You are
like,
not alone. The suffering is real.
"Oh, it's real." I'm like, "I can't do it." And when I've done it where you have to do, like, gratitude, like 10 things or something. I'm like, "Please, God, no. Can I type it?" But I
That's
know there's
actually
a
where
whole
I start my book is that, like, kind of teasing apart the idea of pain and suffering, that,
Yeah.
like, things can be painful, things can be hard, like, writing is hard. I still
Mhm.
have days where I, like, really struggle with my writing, but I don't suffer as much with it as I used to because I've come to understand that, like, the hard parts are just part of the journey. And I
Mhm.
think that's true no matter what we choose to do in life, right? There will be hard parts. In Buddhism, we talk about the second arrow of like the first arrow is the thing that injures you, but then we shoot ourselves again with all the suffering and the turmoil, the mental turmoil that we lay over all the stories that we tell ourselves that just make it worse. And so sometimes if we can recognize that we're doing that, choose to let those narratives go, then we only have to deal with that first arrow of whatever it was that
Mhm.
was hard in the first place without so much mental overlay.
Yeah. Yes. And we were talking earlier about how you did a 2-year mindfulness meditation teacher training program with Jack Kornfield and Tara Brach. And I listened to Tara Brach a lot. What was that experience like? I mean, I find like there's some of the great teachers that are out there.
I think the 2 of them really are I mean, they are the top of the field right now, and Jack Kornfield has been because I when I first started getting into mindfulness, I was in Northern California, and he is a big part of the meditation center up there called Spirit Rock, like, he led that first day-long meditation retreat that I went to, um and he's getting older, and I when I was thinking about wanting to integrate mindfulness into my coaching, I wanted to get a professional certification so I would know what I was doing and not misstep, and when I saw he was teaching with Tara Brach, who has a slightly different style, but very much in line with the underlying teachings, and I just thought, "What a perfect opportunity," because I don't know how much longer he'll be teaching, and then she is she's gotten pretty big lately. She doesn't do a lot of teaching at all. So I signed up for that program, I guess in 2019. It was a 2-year program
Mhm.
through Sounds True. It was fantastic. They bring in a lot of guest speakers. It was weekly lessons. We had like a cohort that we moved through the class with, so we could have discussions. We had a teacher who joined that cohort, just really comprehensive. And I'd already been studying mindfulness for quite a bit at that point, and
Mhm.
still, it's a different thing altogether to try to teach something.
Mm.
So it was an honor to get to study with both of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I know you use what you learned in your own work, in your writing. Do you teach I mean, you're so busy with writing and your newsletter and everything. Do you take anyone on to train them in mindfulness? You have
Absolutely, it's one of the
Oh, yeah, you
biggest
have private
part
coaching. Yep. Mhm.
of what I do. So I write for myself in the mornings because that's my sweet spot. I don't wake up at 5 anymore, now that I
What time's a good wake up? Because they all the masters say, like, Joe Dispenza, "Oh, 4:30 in the morning." I'm like, "No, I love my time in bed in the morning when I
Yeah.
wake up and just, like, luxuriating in the sheets and
Yeah.
quiet." What time do you get up?
My brain because I got up so early for so many years, my brain is kind of it's having trouble letting go of that, so even though I
Oh,
haven't been going to the day job in years, I still kinda naturally wake up around 6,
okay, that's not
and I give myself a little time to lay in bed and think, and then I
Mhm,
get up
mhm,
and I do my normal morning routine, and I find that that's when I'm most creative, so I still do the routine of have a cup of coffee,
mhm,
journal, meditate, do my writing, and then usually around 11 is when I wrap up my work and I do work with clients. But the
mhm,
tail end of that morning routine is I have this online writing community. It's called the Sit Right Here Mindful Writing Community, and I don't lead every session. I have some other mindfulness teachers who are writers who also help lead the sessions. But every day at 9:30, we log on, we meditate for 15 minutes, we write for an hour, and it's a wonderful community of people. It's kind of a self-selecting group of people who sign up for our meditation and writing group, and
mhm,
they're the best people. We get a ton of work done, first of all. Like, people, when they first join, always marvel. They're like, "I can't believe how much work I got done in 1 hour," and it's because they took that 15 minutes to meditate before writing for an hour. And there's
mm,
something magical about being in community, and I feel like that's true no matter what you're working on. Having a community of people that you show up with, do it with, like, even if it's just being on Zoom with the cameras on and we're not even
mhm,
talking, we're just writing,
mhm,
meditating and writing, but super productive, and it's kind of like a twofer, right? If you're a writer, you're getting your meditation done, you're getting your writing done, and then you're like, wipe your hands, you're all done for the day, and you get to go around the rest of your day just feeling good because you got 2 things done that are really important for you
Yeah.
and your mental health.
Yes.
And it's become the cornerstone of my writing routine.
Mhm.
And then in the afternoons after a lunch break is when I work with, like, my private clients when talking
Mhm.
about manuscript review or going over pages, those sorts of things.
Sounds like a wonderful morning. I do love the mornings, and it's nice that you're not rushing out to a corporate job now, that you can just ease into your day and you tap into yourself and your meditation and your writing, and then you have group with the other writers. And so you open with meditation, and then you just do your own work with other people in the space, or do you share things? So it's just like, that's nice.
Just bring whatever,
You're
like,
not
we and
alone.
it takes the pressure off of it too, like, so
Yeah.
many if you have to share work, then you have to worry about sharing work, and we have people who come and just journal, we have people who
Mhm.
are science writers, fiction writers, screenwriters, like,
Mhm.
all across the board, and it doesn't really matter because we don't have the other problem is with sharing is that you open yourself up to feedback, and if you like, let's say you're a screenwriter and you share something with me and I don't understand screenwriting, my feedback may not be very useful.
Right.
So we just take that whole part out of the equation. We just show up and do the work.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
to do it in community, and it holds everyone accountable because this is the time we're working, because 'cause you're all holding a container and space for each other.
exactly.
What a
Yeah.
great what a great outlet.
I
I
never
would
would have guessed how powerful that would be, but then
No.
because of COVID, we, like,
Yes.
had to do it online, and all of a sudden I was like, "Wow, this is actually really powerful." Yeah.
Yeah.
Silver
Yeah.
lining.
Yes, for sure. For sure. Now, are you able to do any in-person stuff? I know, I mean, it's become so big with Zoom and people on Zoom, and it opens up a whole new space for people to get together without having to be in person all over the world. Are you able to do in-person stuff?
I do. I mostly do it, like, at conferences, things like that.
Okay.
So, like, I was a speaker at the Writers
Mhm.
Digest conference. I'm gonna be speaking at a conference in Seattle in October, and that's where I tend to like, I'll get more into the nitty-gritty, like, trying to think in October in Seattle, I'm teaching a class called Writing the Senses, which is all about bringing mindful observation into writing descriptions. And then in the second half of the presentation, we talk about how to engage your inner critic to trim away all the unnecessary descriptions, right? So first we just write it out,
Mhm.
and then you actually engage that critical part of your mind to decide what still belongs on the page and what you should cut. It's I don't want to bore your listeners by getting too much into like the actual writing practice, but that
Hey, but a lot of the listeners might be writers.
yeah, if they're writers,
Yes.
they can always my website has all, like, my classes and everything. Hopefully, you can
Mhm.
put it in the show notes or something,
Yes,
people who are
definitely will.
interested.
I'm gonna have you recap it also on the end too.
Okay, okay, great.
Okay. Well, I'd like to dive into your novel. This was your first novel, right? The 142 Ostriches, which won the Willa Award and was optioned for a film. What did that success teach you about the inner life of a writer versus the outer milestones?
The the outer milestones, it taught me that, like, when you see writers who are or anyone who's having some successes, how much work actually went into the behind the scenes, right? That, um not that I'm an overnight success by any measure just yet, but, like, I don't know, whenever you see these writers who just explode onto the scene, it's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, they came out of nowhere." It's like, "No, they were probably writing for, like, a decade," and then things kinda click together if you stick with it and you keep doing the work. What is it? There's that old saying about opportunity and preparation, like, that luck is just, when opportunity meets preparation.
Mhm.
So I think if it taught me anything, it taught me that, but the novel, 142 Ostriches, was a labor of love. It took me about a decade to write it.
Wow.
I I love it. It started out as a story roughly based on my mom's experiences, growing up. She grew up on a dairy farm, though, and I was very intimidated about writing a dairy farm because, first of all, there are a lot of dairy farmers out there who would know if I got it wrong, and I didn't grow
Mhm.
up on a dairy farm, so I was daunted by trying to do to respectfully portray that as a life. And I love the desert, and so I called my mom and I was like, "Hey, is there any chance there'd be a dairy farm out in the Mojave?" And she, like, straight up laughed at me. She's like, "No."
Licking
Um,
dirt.
so being stubborn, I Googled, like, ranch in the Mojave, and it turned out there was an ostrich farm an hour from my front door here in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
And so, as writers do, I pitched it as a travel story to a website and sold it. And so then I went out and, like, interviewed this man who owned the ostrich farm, and as I think he was kind of lonely because he was so excited to, like, have me stay for hours, and he told me all
Mhm,
these it was great, we had such a great conversation, but as he was walking me around the farm and, like, kinda telling me about the challenges and the things that have happened, slowly, like, my mom's story was falling away, and, like, the plot points that he was telling me were getting woven in, and then over years of rewriting and rewriting, like, almost all of my mom's story got kind of set aside in favor of what the story is now.
mhm,
But the seed is still there. It's still very much about a young woman coming of age on the family farm. It's just that the family farm is now an ostrich farm.
mm.
Uh,
And does he know that he's obviously read your book, and does he know that he's been woven into the story?
he actually passed away before it was published,
Oh,
which
no.
yeah, he had a heart attack, so I never got to share it with him, which I went back like 3 times I went back, so he knew that everything he was telling me was going into it. He knew he was
Mhm.
playing a big part, but no, he never got to read the finished book.
Well, what happened to the farm?
His kids sold it. They didn't wanna be ostrich farmers.
They sold it to someone who's an au
I don't even know how you sell presumably it's not there anymore, so presumably they sold off the ostriches to either other farms or I don't know exactly how that works.
well, let's hope the ostriches are still grazing somewhere.
I know. I hope
Yeah,
so.
I hope so too. So you have another book coming up, which you talked about earlier, that'll be out that's slated for July of 26 or June of 26, around
26.
that time frame. What inspired you to write that book, Sit Right Here? Well, you told us earlier that it's about sitting right here
Yes.
and meditating, but I would love to hear, how did your personal evolution as a mindfulness practitioner shape the wisdom in those pages?
In every way, it really has been such a journey. Like I said, I when I started to realize how much mindfulness had helped me as a writer, I just felt like this deep need to share that. 'Cause I feel like I don't know if it's an American thing or just a human thing, but this romanticizing of the tortured artist is kind of a disservice to anyone who wants to be creative, this idea that, like, you have to suffer. Right, coming back to that question of suffering. Creating something can be hard. It can even be painful, but teasing apart the suffering and setting it aside and making the decision to carry on even when things do get hard because you have something that you want to say. And what a gift that, and how, like, I don't think I've ever met someone who didn't have something to say or a story deep inside them that they want to tell. And it's so easy to watch it get shut down. And it breaks my heart a little bit when I think of all the writers who don't tell their story for whatever I mean, there's so many reasons, and most of them are not craft, Most people don't give up on their novel because they're worried about, diction.
Mhm.
Most of them start writing, and then that inner critic just overwhelms them, or they're like, "What am I do? Who do I think I am? Nobody wants to hear this. Who's gonna
Imposter
care?"
syndrome, yep.
Imposter syndrome, all of those things, and as I have found is the number one thing that shuts people down, and so this book is really my attempt to share what has worked for me, in dismantling those little inner voices that like to try to shut us down. They're trying to protect us. I mean, I'm sure you know this as someone who has practiced mindfulness and is pretty self-aware. Those internal voices are trying to protect us. When they
Mhm.
say, "Who do you think you are trying to write a book?" That little voice is trying to protect you from someone else who might say that. But it's a shame that we let it dictate what we do and don't finish. Because the truth is, I've never heard anyone say to anyone, any writer, like, "Who do you think you are to write that book?" We're much harder on ourselves than anyone else in the world will be, and if we can just be a little nicer to ourselves, it's amazing what we can accomplish.
Yes. So that inner critic, how would you coach writers to respond to it with awareness instead of avoidance?
Yes.
Just
Oh, this
knowing
is
that they're
that's
there to protect us, or they're trying to
yeah.
keep us safe?
Yeah, if I could teach, well, everyone, but especially writers, this would be it. This would be the thing. So what I usually do if I have limited time or if I'm speaking in a conference, I'll guide people through a very simple meditation where we simply, you close your eyes and take a couple deep breaths and focus on something, usually the breath. And then you just notice when your mind wanders, right? So you focused on your breath and you realize you're planning dinner. Okay, let dinner go, come back to the breath. And then you're halfway through the next breath and you realize you're composing that email you have to send later. Okay, you let that email go, come back to the breath. And you practice that, just letting those thoughts go, coming back to the breath. And then what I usually counsel, particularly for writers, is that when the meditation ends, that we're actually not ending the meditation so much as shifting our focus. So instead of focusing on the breath, we put our focus on our writing, and you start writing and that little voice kicks in. You better go unload the dishwasher. Like, okay, just another thought. You let
Back
it go,
to
come back to
writing.
the writing. And then the harsher ones kick in of like, who do you think you are? That sentence was terrible. You better delete that before anyone sees it. Like all those terrible things that can run in your head, you can recognize them as just thoughts and you let them go and you just keep writing. And if you could just that exercise of practicing a little bit of mindfulness, I usually advise like 10 minutes before you try to write. If you can do 10 minutes of just noticing your thoughts and coming back to the anchor, and then shift the anchor to the action of writing and make writing the anchor, you still will notice the thoughts. You'll still let them go and you just keep writing. That's where the magic is. That's how you drop into a state of flow. Most people know like what flow state is, right? That state of mind where like time just disappears and ideas just come up and it's like magic.
Mhm.
And most writers sit down hoping for it. I used to for years, like, oh, please let today be a day where I can drop into that flow state. With this meditation practice, you can put yourself in a flow state every time you sit down to write. And it is
Mm.
magically game changing. I wish I could teach it to every writer in the world.
I'm gonna start using that, and I like how you said that you just don't come out of the meditation, you just kind of, like, open your eyes and you go into the writing.
Yeah.
Instead of, like, exchanging one for the other, you're just merging
Yeah.
to something else
You just
while
move the
in a
anchor.
yeah,
Yeah.
meditative state.
Because really, it's just about where your focus, and you either
Mhm.
focused on the breath or you focus on the
On the
writing.
other thing.
The
Yep.
practice is pretty much the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and that can be used in anything that we're doing, really.
So
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Now, is that the same thing that you would use, like, because I'm sure you've worked with writers that experience burnout and self-doubt. Is that the same mindfulness practice that you would recommend to gently reawaken creative joy? Or is there another one that somebody that's like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm burnt out.
Yeah, there are different practices. Self-compassion practice, loving kindness practice
Mhm.
can be really good when you hit that point of burnout. I also sometimes when you hit that point of burnout, it's you need a break. Sometimes that's what your body is telling you, and I've certainly I've certainly hit that point with certain projects, and for me, the way to make it a break and not quitting is I literally will put a calendar on the wall and circle the date where I'm gonna start up again. And I'd be like, okay, I'm so sick of this project. I don't even want to look at it. I'm going to give myself 2 weeks to not even think about it. But on such and such date, I will get back to work. And I know that I put it in my head. And that way I don't get into the like, there's no question when will I get back to it? Will I get back to it? And then I'm not worried about quitting. I know I'm just giving myself a little space to
Mhm.
relax and rest, and that's important. Yeah, particularly
Yes.
for creative work, you have to fill the well, as they say.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. So, what would you say to the writer who's been sitting on a story for years? Maybe they're paralyzed by perfectionism or fear of being seen.
Yeah. Getting in community is a game changer. Mindfulness practice in general, but especially like addressing the fear of being seen thing. I think one of the reasons we can be afraid of putting our writing is a really vulnerable thing. You're sharing something that's very personal, and
Mm,
it's totally normal to be afraid to put those things out into the world. But when you're with a community, even if it's just a small group of other writers, you start to see how normal that is to have those fears. And you have people there who will back you up, who will say, like, yes, send that story out. And it will probably get rejected. And that's okay. And we still love you. Let's keep writing. I community, there's no substitute for having people in your
mm.
corner that you can share those honest fears with, who will understand them, who will back you up. I think finding people is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because here's your baby and you release it into the world and you get criticized. You just want to curl up and, like, I'm not good enough. Who do I think I am? Or I'm like, this is stupid. And the people that will take their manuscript and you rip it up and throw it away, like, no, don't do Don't
Well, and
do
the
that.
truth is that there is no book that is universally liked. Someone will not like your
Yes.
book.
Yes. Yep.
How vocal that person is a variable you can't control. But, like, it's if you need proof, go to Goodreads, look up your favorite book, scroll down to the one-star reviews. They're there.
Mhm.
Every book has one-star reviews,
Oh, yeah.
even the ones that were, like, best New York Times bestsellers for months, they still one-star reviews. There were people who hated those books. And the challenge is to stack up the people who love you and support you so that when those little and I highly recommend never reading the one-star reviews, but if that voice of doubt comes from some outside source, you have enough really good stuff on the other side to balance
Mhm.
it out and make sure that you keep going because it's so easy. Isolation just breeds self-doubt. And if you're
Mhm.
alone, all it takes is one troll to say something mean on Twitter and you fall apart. But if
Yeah.
you have a community of people to back you up, then you can take all the criticism and you can see it more as constructive because some criticism will be constructive and
Mhm.
some just won't. And those ones you just let those
Some
ones
just
go.
like to be keyboard warriors. It's almost like people are hunting at something good to just say
Ugh,
something negative. We see that in reviews, like Amazon reviews. I mean, a
yeah,
lot of those are bought, but you see that all the time. You always have the naysayer. And
always.
what is that saying? Like, you haven't made it unless you've had a bad review or been criticized. So, yeah, yeah, just take it all with a grain of salt because there are a lot of trolls out there that are unhappy in their own life. And like you said, some of it is good criticism. But a one star, whenever you're getting 5 stars, there's something to be said there. It's all coming from their own filter, too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've coached so many writers. I'd like to talk about craft and discipline in the industry. I'm sure you've seen a lot of people that were stuck and then you've coached them to published. What
Mhm.
patterns do you see that keep people stuck? And how do you help them move through those kind of blocks?
Yeah. It's a good question. The inner critic is definitely top of the list, which is why I said like that little meditation that we just talked about is the thing I wish I could tell every writer, because that's how, becoming aware of the inner critic is the only way to really push through that. I shouldn't say that. It's not the only way. It's the easiest way. Writers do push through berating themselves the whole way, but that sounds awful. Being kind to yourself, noticing that inner critic, inviting it to sit down and just keep writing. There are specific ways that the inner critic can manifest. One of them I see a lot is perfectionism. So, neurologically speaking, the creative act of writing is very different from the act of editing. It uses different parts of your brain. And when people call themselves perfectionists, what I often see them do is they try to write and edit at the same time. So they'll write a sentence or even a few sentences and then they go back and they try to edit those and make them perfect, which first of all, it's very hard to like switch back and forth between writing and editing brain. We don't multitask. Even if you think you're multitasking, you're not. You're just switching back and forth. So people do that. But then what happens is like they'll spend hours getting the first three sentences right. And then they write the next few sentences and like, ugh, all of us now the first three sentences don't work. So now I have to go back, rewrite the first three. And like those are the people I worry about the most because that is the hardest thing to push through, like, white knuckling it, right? Like, people have written books that way. It is possible, but more often than not, what I see is people quit, and that's a shame.
Mhm.
And perfectionists have the hardest time letting go of writing something that is imperfect. And I think the mindfulness practice, the one that we just did, is the best way to start to recognize that and unwind it. But perfectionism is probably one of the hardest ones that I see writers face. The good news on this is that if you can get your inner perfectionist, your inner critic to just sit down while you get your first draft done, then when you start your second draft, that's when you bring that inner critic in and you just set her
Mhm.
loose. You're like, "Yes, tell me everything that's wrong with this book," and she will tell you. "That sentence sucks. That character's unbelievable." Blah blah blah. Like let her go crazy, make all the notes because that is useful. Those are things that then you can use. But if you can't get that inner critic to be quiet through a first draft, you won't get through a first draft. And if you don't get through the first draft, you will never finish your book because you can edit a pile of crap into beautiful prose. You absolutely can, but you can't edit a blank page. You have
Mm-mm.
to get that first draft down.
Mhm.
So that's where I most see people get derailed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's just like that writing, automatic writing. You're writing your stream of thought because a lot of times if you get that into paper and then you look back at it, not the random stream of thoughts, but you start the creative process and you start writing and put it into paper and get it done, a lot of times it's not as bad as we think it is. So if we're criticizing every little, like you said, we won't get anywhere, nothing will get done. But I'm often surprised whenever I'm doing something creative. I'm like, oh, I didn't think that was very good while I was doing it, but wow, this is really good. I'm really proud of myself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's surprising how much you can feel like something's just terrible, and you go back and read it, and you're like, "Oh, there's
It's not
actually something worthwhile here."
bad. So
But you have to get through it first,
yes.
step away, and then, like, come back and read it, and yeah, so getting through I've stopped calling it a crappy first draft. A lot of people call it the crappy first draft. I'm trying to start calling it the discovery draft because I feel like it's a little kinder, and I think people, especially perfectionists, are much more willing to write a discovery draft than a crappy draft.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that sounds a lot softer and something that you can easily take in and digest instead of the
Yeah.
crappy first round because it's like,
Nobody
let's
wants to
see."
write crap. Nobody.
No,
Yeah.
nobody. So I would like to hear about what your take is on the current publishing landscape, especially for women writers, and how can mindfulness help us stay grounded in such a high stakes industry?
Yeah. So much to unpack there. For people who are writing short stories, poetry and essays, a lot more men are getting published in journals for short stories, poems, essays. But what's interesting, because I've spoken to a lot of editors of these journals, and the thing that I hear over and over again from them is that if a woman sends in a story and they reject it for whatever reason, like maybe it's too long, maybe they have a story that's too similar to it already, like there's lots of reasons the stories can be rejected. He said he'll never hear from that writer again. Whereas when a man sends a story and he
Mm,
rejects it, within an hour, the man has sent another story. He's like, "Well, how about this one? How about this one?" And the man just keeps sending story.
wow.
Like there's this persistence that for whatever reason, women writers, we take the rejection really personally, and they're like, "Oh, they don't like me." Not they
Mm,
didn't like the story. We tend to internalize it of like, "Oh, they didn't like me, so
mhm.
I'm embarrassed. I'm not gonna send another story." So if just put that out there for any writer, any particularly the women, resend. Resend your stories. Write many stories. Send them the next one. It is not personal. Rejection is not personal. So on the short story front, I think that's important to put out there that one of the main reason that women don't get published as much as men is that we don't submit as much. Plain and simple.
That's
When you get
interesting.
into novels and
Mhm.
books, long form nonfiction and fiction, the numbers shift pretty dramatically. And I forget the last study I read, but it's much more evenly distributed from what I understand in longer form. Publication in general is is an interesting mixed bag. Politics definitely plays a part. You have traditional, you have self-publishing, you have hybrid publishing. There's so many options now. I am a big fan of traditional publishing because I don't know anything about publishing, and it's a whole other thing. I mean, you have to learn the game of publishing if you want to self-publish. And a lot of people do it and they do it really well. And you certainly can. It's much harder for fiction to self-publish because if you, like, for instance, I'll use my dad as an example. He's written a memoir about his time flying helicopters. He's written 3 of them, in fact. And he was already going to be going to all the reunions and association meetings and like all over the country, and he takes his books with him and he just trades like 20s for books all day long. He's sold thousands of copies. Totally self-published because his niche, he knows his niche. It's like retired pilots. There are thousands and thousands of them out there. He knows how to reach them.
That is a niche.
Easy sell. Fiction is a much harder sell for self-publishing. So I
Mhm.
usually steer people to at least give a shot to traditional publishing because traditional publishers, they know the market, they know how to get the book out there. That is their job. That said, people do it and they do it well, but it's a whole second job. So you write the book, that's your first job, then selling the book becomes the second job, which is a lot of work.
Mm.
Hybrid is almost hard to even talk about because there's so many different kinds of hybrid publishing. There's hybrid that's basically self-publishing, but they post it to Kindle for you or Amazon. There's hybrid that like you pay a pretty significant fee, but it's almost like having a traditional publisher, like, and everything in between. So there's so many options out there in terms of publishing that it really It's hard to give any blanket statements. I think the most important part is to think about what is it that you are hoping for? What is it that you want? And then try to match the publishing solution that fills that need and desire.
Mm. Mhm. It does. You've written fiction and you have said, why do you believe fiction matters, especially now?
So much. Like I feel very strongly about this, that fiction is so important, especially now when our country is very divided, our communities are very
Mhm.
divided and very polarized. Fiction is kind of like magic, where
Mhm.
in 2 ways, actually in 3, but we'll start with the 2. The first, I think, is that as the writer of the fiction, you are putting your voice out into the world and sharing an opinion that then can reach somebody and give them a perspective that they might not otherwise have. And then the other is that, okay, so let me be clear in the 2 ways. One is that a reader might read something that you've written that's totally different from their life experience and build some empathy. So let's say you are a LGBTQ writer and you're in your early 20s and you are writing a story that's loosely based on your life. And maybe someone who's completely different from you in a different part of the country reads that story and finally sees a character that they understand, and it builds empathy for somebody who is in that LGBTQ community, and that you have younger perspectives on things, and it just opens up the empathy and gives people new perspective. The other part of that is that if you write that story as like a young 20 something LGBTQ individual, that there may be some other like 18-year-old or early 20 something who's never met anyone like themselves. Maybe they're like still in the closet, don't feel like they could ever truly be themselves. And then they read your story and they're like, they're not alone.
Mhm.
The power of that to connect with another human. And the beauty of a book is that books are just out there. Like, that book could fall into that person's hand. Like, you could be an old lady by the time some young person picks that up, and still, it would be like they get to see someone like them and know that they're not alone, and how powerful that is.
Mhm.
So,
That's
I
powerful.
believe deeply in the power of fiction.
Yeah, that's powerful. It's powerful. And like you said, like how everyone's polarized and divided right now, it just takes us away from our screens. I mean, you can read it on a tablet, but I like touching a book. I love my libraries. But it just can take you into another world. It can be a beautiful escape. And I can't wait when I get into a good book. I can't wait to sit down with it again. I just
Yeah,
can just be lost in the pages and it connects, like you said, new perspective for the listeners, and I'm not alone, and I identify myself with this character.
yeah,
So it can be very healing
yeah.
fiction.
And that escapism is healing too in and of itself. Like, during COVID, I went into my daughter's room. I was like, because she was really, at the time, she was really into, like, YA fantasy, like other worlds and things like that,
Mhm.
and I was like, "Yes, to, like, take me out of this world and put me in a world with, like,
Yeah.
dragons and magic," and I just read through her whole bookshelf, and it was wonderful. It gave me a
Wow.
place at the end of the day to just oh, sorry.
Okay.
To feel relaxed
And
and
you needed
excited.
to.
Yeah.
And you needed that outlet. I mean, I rabbit holed during it. I was like, "Oh god," but just an escape because it's like, "What upside down world are we living in?" It was
Right.
crazy. It was
Any world but
crazy.
this one.
Yes, exactly, and I'm feeling a little better,
Yeah,
in this world right now, so thank God. Like, let's not have that happen to us again, but you know what? It really forced a lot of people to go within, like, people really, like, whatever they were doing in life, it didn't work anymore. There was a lot of time for self-reflection during that period, so, I mean, I guess that was one of the blessings of that period, like, a lot of people came out of it really finding more purpose-driven life.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and more in tune with ourselves. Well, this has been a great conversation. There's just like 1 or 2 more questions before we go. I would love to hear if you could leave our listeners with one invitation for showing up to the page and to themselves with more grace and presence, what would it be?
I think it can be really fun to set up, like, a tiny bit of ritual around writing. Like,
Mhm.
not a lot, you don't have to get crazy, but to have, like, a regular thing that you do. Like, for me, with my coffee and my journal and my
Oh, I
meditation,
love
like,
coffee.
that's my little routine, but
Yeah, it
I've
sounds so
known
good.
writers who, like, they'll light a little candle, or, I have, like, one of those timers with the
Mhm.
sand that runs through them, just turning that over and like literally closing the door, turning off the phone, turning over the little sand timer and being like, I'm just going to give myself this time to focus. But like little tiny rituals like that can be really powerful and also kind of fun to
Mhm.
explore and play around with. So I guess that would be an invitation to anyone who's just starting to explore.
Some rituals, or light the Palo Santo and blow it. Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a fabulous I think that is a fabulous thing to do is add some rituals. Well, let's let our audience know where they can find you. I know you said a little bit in the beginning, but I would just like to end with that. And then I, of course, will put in the show notes. I know you've talked about your upcoming book that you're working on, any of your coaching, where they can find your old book, anything that lights you up right now. Of course, your new book or any new projects and such.
Yeah, I'm very easy to find. There are not that many April Davilas. So if you go to aprildavila.com, that's kind of my home base. I have a Friday newsletter called Scribbling Buddha. You mentioned it.
Yes.
And it's 8 great things from the world of mindfulness and writing every week. And I just feel like
Oh,
because we all need more good news in our lives. So I would invite people to sign up for that. And then because it's a list of 8 great things, like one of them, when my book comes out, will say like, hey, my book is available. So if people are curious
yes.
about the book when it comes, that would be an easy way to keep in touch and hear about that. And then I also on my website have all kinds of links to different classes that I teach, workshops when I'm at conferences. All of those kinds of things are there on my website. So people
Great.
are invited to come there, check it out.
Great, thank you. I'm curious, the 8 great things from the world of mindfulness, is that something you come up with when you're doing your meditation practice in the morning and you're writing?
It's more of like a news aggregator. I tend to pull articles from other
Okay.
places. Like occasionally it'll be an article I've written, but usually it's stuff from the world of like this. Well, and it's usually the intersection of writing and mindfulness. So it'll be, I don't know, like 8 writers you didn't know were into mindfulness, or
Okay.
there was like a while back, there was an auction of like the old typewriters of famous
Mm.
writers, silly, fun things from the world of mindfulness and writing,
Oh,
just
that's
because it's
great.
fun. Yeah.
That's great. Everybody sign up for her newsletter and find her. I'll put everything in the show notes as well. And I would love to wrap up this conversation with my famous last question, and that's to you. And that's to what does it mean for you to live with an awakened heart?
It's a great question. And for me, it's about connection. Living with an awakened heart, you get like that moment of choice when you have a little more mindful interactions and you get to choose where you're going to spend your time. So instead of like when I find myself super busy and rushing around and I don't have time for everything, I can pause and be like, okay, what's really important here? And it's almost always my family. And so I cancel the other thing and I don't really
Mhm.
think twice about it. It's because living in a mindful way has really, for me, illuminated what's most important. And
Mhm.
it really allows me to let go of everything else.
Beautiful. Choose. You have choices, choose, and connection. And with that, I want to thank you for coming on the Awaken Heart podcast. And I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day. Thank you for sharing all your beautiful stories. You've got such a beautiful glow. You're smiling. I can tell you love what you're doing.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing it with the world and my audience.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
Okay, thanks. Have a good rest of your day. Bye. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Awaken Heart podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, share it with a friend. And if you haven't already, head on over to your favorite podcast app to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, you can reach me at theawakenheartpodcast.com.